Hey. Welcome to episode 282 of Ugly Awesome Podcast entitled Love Substantially. Love Substantially. I'm your host, Jason Freeman, and in this episode, I feel it's going to be challenging to me, and I hope it's challenging to all of us. Challenging in a good way, like challenging, like choosing to win a marathon, choosing to win an Ironman, which are two winning events. I wish I had thought of a different example than Ironman, but I didn't. So that's why you got. But for me, I know it's, and I don't know. I just looked at the ceiling. For me, I know that it's easy to just feel overwhelmed. Taking care of my own life, and then the reality is there's a world, there's billions of people, in fact, children, men, women out there to take to help empower, and just as they can help us, and it's hard to know how to interact with that vastness that the world is. Wow. Before I get deeper into this conversation with myself, which is dawning to me uh, as I talk about it, let me bring on my guest, who has powerful experiences and thoughts on the subject, and so many stories, and so much wisdom. And I'll bring her on, but first, this.
Today's guest, Sarah Marr.
Hey, Sarah, welcome to Ugly Awesome Podcast.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me.
I know I was very much inspired by your TEDx talk, which we'll get to later, and I'm so pleased that you say yes to coming on the show.
Thank you.
So thanks for being here. So in your career, you've worked a lot with young people, and you have two kids of your own. So first, I want to like go back a little bit to your own childhood, because as adults, I think sometimes it's easy to get caught up in our own world of adulting, and forget what it's like.
hmm
So if I had known you when you were a kid,
hmm
what were you interested in?
hmm Well, I think for me, when I think of kids and myself as a kid, I really think kind of elementary school. age, kindergarten through 5th grade a little bit. And so at that age, I loved being outside. I loved fishing with my dad and sisters. I loved reading and read. I mean, at recess, would walk around with a book in elementary school. And I also had a lot of love and a lot of support in my childhood and a lot of encouragement from my parents and my family to be whatever I wanted to be able to pursue interests. We had lots of opportunities and a lot of love that felt really special and really good.
So you loved reading, and I really like the image of you walking around the playground with a book, and like it's so magic as a kid to like suddenly know what the words on the page mean and know that they tell a story, and
Yeah.
it's exciting.
Yeah, I was really interested in the Boxcar series, the Boxcar Children.
Oh yeah.
Of course, I don't know if there's hundreds of them, but one after the next, and I was always ready in case something terrible should happen to find a boxcar and, take care of my sisters, and felt really prepared to in this imaginary world where I suddenly might be all by myself.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 2 younger sisters.
Do you? You're the oldest, huh?
I'm the oldest, yeah.
What else were you interested in as a kid?
I think as a kid, we loved exploring. We did have quite a bit of independence as kids. So getting outside, kind of in the morning and riding the bike to find your neighbors or your other friends. And then once you had a group, you could go to the park, kind of stay out until the street lights came on. And then you either had to make a phone call that you didn't realize what time it was and you're stuck at your friend's house, or you had to get home on time. And it was still no cell phones. I think later on, my mom got a phone. She worked for a neurosurgeon. And so she got an early pager and then an early phone that was for the doctor, but it was still very much, you were just in the world wherever you were. And, the landline would ring. And if you were wanting to be on the internet later in middle school and high school, you had to sit at your computer and wait for the dial-up and do all those things. So I think that allowed for a lot more just presence in the moment with our friends and exploration, and felt a lot slower.
You said this phrase, and I find it amazing. It was still a time when we were just in the world wherever we were.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been fascinating to see how technology has changed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm almost never in the world just where I am anymore. There's always a side conversation or something else happening in the background that I can check whenever I want. and update and feel the need to refresh my email or whatever it might be. So I try really hard to not allow myself to do that at every moment that I wish I could.
Yeah, it's a challenge. Fast forward to, and we'll kind of jump all around because I believe like all of our experiences contribute to where we are now.
Yes.
So I like to, but fast forward to 18, you went on a church trip, a mission trip to Mexico, right?
Yep.
What do you? So where did you fly from in the U.S. to Mexico?
I think maybe we flew from Omaha and must have had a connecting flight. Either we landed in California and drove, but I don't really remember anymore the pathway.
Oh, so you drove from Southern California to Mexico?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. But from Sioux Falls anyway, through planes and vehicles, got to Cabo San Lucas.
What are your first memories of being in Mexico?
Well, it was interesting. We had a connection to that neighborhood, to that community, through one of the other parishioners in the church. And so they also donated their home for accommodation while we were there. And so when we first got there, it was really, really incredibly beautiful. But also noticed the high gates and security to enter this community. And then, just this massive house with a pool and a guest house and beautiful gardens. It was really, really extraordinary, really beautiful place to stay in. Really friendly neighbors that we, met kind of right away. And then during the day, we went to the kind of service assignments.
And what was the service assignment?
We had two different assignments. One of them was helping to refurbish wheelchairs and medical equipment for children and trying to, kind of retrofit. And so if families were coming in, we would help play with the kids and entertain children while they're waiting for this equipment to be ready. And then the other one was a kind of community, almost like a, St. Vincent de Paul or a Goodwill or something like this, but a community shop where community members could purchase clothing, housewares, things like that at this store, either by contributing, like through volunteering to their community. Kids could do volunteer chores for the community and things like that and kind of establish credit if they didn't have money. Or you could buy things if you were working and had money. And so we went there to kind of help at the store. And I was painting a mural on one of the sections of wall that they had. And on the other side of this mural, on the other side of this wall, kind of over the top of the hill, walked over and looked out and saw this community stretching out as far as I could see of um, houses that have tin or cardboard siding, likely no floors, except, a dirt floor. And they're all quite, maybe 10 by 10 and right next to each other. And so it was kind of this my first introduction to mass scale poverty and thinking about how many people must be living down there, how many we see these kids running up to us all the time, how many kids are here. Going back to this other home that we were staying in at the end of the day, which really just sharpened the contrast between what this wealth can look like and what this poverty or this other reality is. And I was kind of stunned on the spot and totally overwhelmed. I just kind of just started spiraling in my mind in terms of cataloging and going through all the things that I have at my house, being able to see in front of my face all the things that people in the world don't have, spiraling and going through guilt and also anger and feelings of, hoarding resources and being angry about that, feelings of I've got to get rid of everything as fast as I can. And through the spiral, feeling really guilty and feeling a little bit, this idea emerged of, well, I have never seen this before. And I really don't have to ever see it again. Was super overwhelming and just thought I could just go home and this doesn't have to be part of my life at all. I don't have to look at it anymore. I don't have to think about it again. If I work really hard, I can just kind of remember this as a service trip and move on. And having that, as that thought arose, even just as quickly was the truth and reality of there's no way I can unsee this or unknow this. There's no way, nothing I can do that will change this reality. And so I've got to figure out how to deal with it and what that means for my life now. What choices will I make moving forward in light of a better understanding of the world, right? That I never had that until then.
So what was your next step once you got back home and like figuring out how to deal with it or how to integrate what the world really is in the contrast?
Yeah. Well, the first thing was, that was right after senior year. So I was starting college. So in college, wanted to find opportunities really focused on learning more and having a better understanding of what is the world. I went in to school with an undeclared major, and just kind of took a variety of classes in order to find out what might be the best, and settled into philosophy fairly quickly. I loved my philosophy classes and felt like I was beginning to understand kind of reality a little bit better. And then in addition to that, started seeking out opportunities to continue exploring the world as it is and to meaningfully contribute to the world. I am really cautious of, a kind of savior complex of I have resources and I have education. So let me go and tell you in a different community. Let me go and help you and do something for you that you can't do for yourself. Really careful and skeptical of that attitude, but rather I want to go and learn. I want to go and experience. And if I can go and share resources and serve, that feels like a better collaboration, and a way to connect across nationalities, across countries, to be able to witness, the humanity that is in these communities everywhere in the world. So I sought out opportunities like that in college and began to travel a lot more, and also worked while I was at Creighton in the Omaha community, serving the community and being active in that community there.
How did you serve the community in Omaha?
One of my favorites was there was a philosophy for children program that was started. And so we would, as philosophy students, we would go to elementary classes. We did, started in first grade to about third grade and did basic logic questions, just the establishing kind of some basic principles of logic, but then encouraged kids to ask questions that we could discuss and, apply some logic, to help establish some like foundations of critical thinking. That was the goal of the program. Wow. And so these schools were schools all over Omaha, with elementary school students. And that was a really exciting exchange with kids. And they know so much more. I mean, just intuitively, you're kind of blown away. Like there was a class that we were talking about stealing and what is it to really like have property, or what is it to have your thing? And just kind of immediately somebody offers up, well, what if they steal your ideas? And I'm like, yeah, no kidding, like, wow. Whoa, intellectual property from a 7-year-old is just exciting to witness and to talk about. But so things like that were fun.
So with that program, you put yourself in a situation where you were able to be surprised by the brilliance of small kids. Mm-hmm. That's pretty exciting. When you went during college to different countries, how were you surprised by the brilliance of the people who lived in those countries?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think this is an example of from a lesson from children again, but I had a really hard lesson. I had a neighbor child that would walk with me when I was staying with one of the host families.
In what country?
In the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
And so in the Dominican Republic, we lived on a campus for a lot of the time, but we had to host community visits where we stayed with host families. And so one of our community visits, we were there to provide labor for a community project. Our tuition helped fund the Dominican like project leaders, so that they could get paid for their expertise and we could provide labor and the community chooses a project. So this project happened to be rebuilding a school for this community. So we were all together and I had a little neighbor girl who would walk with me every day to the work site and would want, help and run around the work site. And she was a darling. And we're at this work site and I noticed that she doesn't have any shoes on. And I tell her, you need to go put your shoes on. We're at a work site. This is dangerous. Get your shoes on. And she comes back a little while later, still no shoes. And I was like, what are you doing? You got to put your shoes on. This is crazy. Okay, I'll put my shoes on. A little while later, the third time she comes again and no shoes. And I'm like, I know you have shoes. We walk together. So this isn't a question of you don't have shoes. Put your shoes on. Otherwise, you have to go home. You can't come with me anymore because you're going to get hurt. So this time I stay and watch her as she goes over. She goes over then to another little girl who is a little younger than her, who doesn't have any shoes. And she taps her on the shoulder and says, I need my shoes back or I have to go home. And I watched this exchange just thinking, this like very basic, these assumptions that I grow up with and hearing my family, put your shoes on if you go outside, and knowing, yes, she had shoes, but the problem really is that I didn't stop at all to ask, where are your shoes? In knowing, right? I could have simply said, where are they? And she could have said, I'm sharing with this other little girl. And then I can say, oh, okay, if you're sharing, then this is, if you're wearing shoes, you can be here. If you're not wearing shoes, you can be here, and set up an environment so they can both be there and be safe. And that was an important lesson for me in considering how to be curious and how to stop to ask the questions before, even if it's out of a good motivation. Of course, it's a good motivation. I assume everybody has trying to have good motivations, right? But that was important for me to learn, that ask the question.
Those assumptions, they can come so fast, and they can just come from our own frame of reference and our own experience. How do you these days? How do you what ways have you found to catch your assumptions early on?
Well, I think I've become much more disciplined through my teaching practice in terms of asking questions. I set goals for myself as a teacher in terms of how I wanted my classroom to function. And one of the goals, in order to help children become more independent, make their own choices, and solve their own problems, was to only ask questions to my students and not have any statements. And so for months,
That's a challenging goal.
Months, practice and constant practice, right? My philosophy is that teaching is a practice that we practice every day. And so the great thing about practice is that if you make a mistake, great, you're learning, but you can get better, right? And
Mm.
so I practiced a long time asking, and I told my students, from now on, I have nothing to tell you. I'm only going to ask you, and we're going to, figure it out together, but I need to ask. And so that helped ingrain questions as a first instinct rather than something that comes up later. And so now, even out of the classroom, being ready, well, what made you think about it that way? Or how did you decide this? Or what happened next? And try to engage in a conversation through questions.
If this is just a dumb example, but if a kid is telling you something that's quote unquote wrong, like a kid says, Mrs. Ma, the sky is green. The sky is green, Mrs. Ma. How would you? I mean, the natural instinct is to say, "Oh no, that's not right. The sky is blue." But how would you instead ask them a question about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think as soon as you said, my question is, what makes you think that?
What makes you think that?
What makes you think that?
Just like the curiosity. What makes you think that?
What makes you think that? And then if they say, like, my daughter is very good at this. I ask her questions and she's really good at playing and teasing and coming up with answers that are more of a game, right? So I can imagine her saying, well, look, it looks green, and just looking me dead in the eye. I can see that it's green. And I would look back at my daughter and say, do you really think so? And she might say yes. And I might say, do you think we need to get your eyes checked? Like, what? I don't know. Maybe, what do you think? Do you think you might need glasses or something? And we'll go on and continue. And sometimes it turns really silly. So then we're playing, and that's great. And the imagination is great. It could also be, what if everything is green? Then what kind of world would it be? Can we imagine? What does that look like? And so you can ask questions to help play and help imagination. You can also ask questions to help children solve their own problems. So I think something also, when kids come and they say, somebody hit me, or somebody was mean, or somebody did whatever it is, then first I'm going to say, well, how do you feel? Did that bother you? It doesn't have, what people say doesn't have to bother us, right? And so I think adults so many times jump to being so offended or hurt by what this other kid, someone called me stupid. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Does it have to be? Like, okay, and are you stupid? No. How do you feel? Did it bother you? Oh, well, no, it doesn't bother me because I know I'm not stupid. Okay, well, do you want to do anything about it? No, I don't need to. Okay.
But I mean, and that's a far different path to go on, and then cementing in the child's mind that it's always terrible if someone says something to you that's negative.
Yeah, it's a hard. In my classroom, we worked really hard to internalize that with the students, that First of all, it doesn't have to hurt our feelings.
Mm.
But sometimes it does. And that's all
Mm.
you can acknowledge that and say, it
Mm.
hurt my feelings. That did bother me. Okay. It bothers you. So what do you want to do about it? Right? That's still your problem. You're choosing your problem. So, oh, well, I think they should say sorry. Great. That sounds great to me. Do you want to go over to ask them for an apology? Do you need my help? And if you can go over by yourself, oh, say sorry. You owe me an apology. Okay, they say sorry, we move on, and that's great. Or if you need my help, then I can come behind you. But you will ask for what you need. I'm not going to solve problems for children. I'm not going to, confront a child because of what another child says. They can do it. They can solve their own problems, and they can decide what's fair in terms of what they need to feel better, right? As a teacher, I will challenge if they say, well, I don't think they should ever get to go to recess again. I'm gonna say, do you think that's fair, really? Like, do you think I can enforce that? Probably not. So we can get there. But I want children to handle that. I don't want to do that for them.
So it sounds like this discipline, this practice of asking questions has also, it must, and does it also, how has this practice changed the way you see the world?
Mm-hmm. For me, I think an important lesson for me is considering, and what I've learned from it is, what can I control and what can I control? And asking myself, really, can I control this or not? And it turns out that there's way more things out of my control than that are in my control. And the things that are in my control, I really want them to be in my control. I do not like it when things that I can control don't go the way I want. So I have become very careful to ask, is this in my control or not? And if not, whose control is it? Or is it just a force of nature or whatever? So that I can let that go, right? I think a very, very common challenge for myself, but I see it with kids, I see it everywhere, that people want to control other people. We really want to control kids. That seems easy. They're small, first of all, right? So physical control, mental control, but their whole lives, we drop them off, we get them dressed, we give them what to eat. Everything is controlled for them. I think some people, I just heard this very recently, that some people get confused about parenting. They see themselves as God, and they're manipulating their children in such a way. And as their kids grow and become less like children and more like adults, that the realization that they're not God is a very difficult thing to face. Can cause really big problems in the parent-child relationship, right? And so for me, from the start with kids, I don't want to treat them. They already know. They are so intuitive what's right and what's wrong, what they need, how they feel. They're so good at expressing how they feel. They're so good at expressing what's right and wrong. We can help them. We need to help them, right? Have nutritious food and good options. But our control is really their environment. It's not their choices. And I think that actually when I think about the adult world, where I've been working most recently, again, it's about controlling the environment, controlling the systems so that people can flourish and make their own choices within those systems. That I think those systems are present for in everybody's workplace, in everybody's life. And so if I can help design systems that allow people to flourish for their good, right? Then that's really what a mutually loving, mutually good system looks like.
Let's come back to systems because it's really important. But first, you told the story in your TEDx talk of your first year teaching in the South Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you go in? What mindset did you go into that your first classroom with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my first year in the South Bronx, I wanted to do really well. I wanted people to think I was a good teacher. I cared a lot about what the other adults thought and about my own success in the classroom. I think that's important, like to acknowledge off the bat. I wanted to be like a good teacher, right? And the other mindset that I went into at that time was we're going to have really strict rules. And my focus and emphasis of control was on controlling children themselves and not the environment at all. I mean, it was the environment really was a struggle for organization, for systems, for all of it was totally absent. And so every day struggling, I was pouring this energy into controlling these kids. What I thought teachers did, raise your hand, sit down, don't run, no talking, do it like this. We're not doing that. We're doing this, and this constant kind of absolute authority.
As you say those things, I can feel the stress in my gut. Yeah,
It was
yeah.
stressful. Yeah. And I meant in my TED talk, and I told this story that as I'm doing this, I still feel like I love the kids. I mean, I'm doing this whole thing because I love the kids. I loved being there. It was so hard, but I was loving it, and struggling, but excited, and energized and feeling like, geez, I really found something cool. And then one day in my classroom, a child left a note that said, "I hate you," on my board. And I mean, I was like adult level devastated. This kid, it really hurt my feelings. And I was really just heartbroken. And then again, this like instinct for control and authority, I went to the office and said, there's been vandalism. We need to clean it up. Who's responsible? What kind of investigation are we going to have? Like,
There's been vandalism.
Yeah, right? Like, yeah, exactly. So the director of operations at the time looked at me and was like, ugh. Like, what? First of all, let's talk about you. Like, why is a child, like, this is a child. Why is a child hurting your feelings like this? What is wrong with you? Like, you have no love in your life that a child is shattering your self-esteem and your concept, and There's no investigation. This is just a kid. What are you talking? Kids do this. What are you talking about? I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So went back to my classroom and really thought about, what am I doing? If this is how my students feel, is this what I want? This isn't what I want. And if this is how they feel, what am I responsible for here? I'm responsible for how my kids feel when they're around me, right? That's in this classroom, if they feel safe or not, if they feel loved in this classroom, I can control that. So at that time, I didn't have a teaching degree. I was in a teaching fellowship, so I was learning about becoming a teacher and getting coaching. And I decided that I would need my master's. And so I got my master's of science and education, learning the fundamentals of how to really do a good job with instruction. And then also did a lot more discovery and practice on building relationships and helping build the kind of relationships where children know that they are loved and know that they are in an environment where they get to make their own choices and they get to experience the consequences of their choices, right? So you make a mess, you clean a mess. You produce something worth celebrating, we celebrate it, and I'm going to set up an environment that is built on systems. Kids can understand the systems and then they can make choices to operate within them, right?
So, as part of the system, did you eventually start telling your class that you loved them?
Yeah. So this was that. I'm glad that you said that, because that was the first, when I had no idea how to start changing my classroom culture and I had no idea how to gain back these or rebuild relationships that I had damaged. The first thing was, I have to tell them I love them. And I felt initially this very weird, like, can I do that? Are you allowed to tell other people's kids that you love them? And is that weird? And am I going to get in trouble? And I don't know where these questions came from for me, but I felt like maybe it was weird. But I couldn't come up with anything better either. So I just decided I've got to start somewhere. And so every day started and told them, have I told you yet today how much I love you? Which is something that my dad always said to me and my sisters and my mom. And so every day, have I told you yet how much I love you? And it's so exciting. The kids, sometimes, yes, we know that you love us. And sometimes, no, you didn't tell me yet today. And oh my gosh, I love you so much, and begin, by saying it and then building the systems that back it up, right? You got to mean and do, take action to back up what you say.
So in the classroom, we've talked about the process of asking students questions and letting them make choices and honoring those choices. But what other systems did you implement to show love to your students?
Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest things is that we if there are mistakes that happen, or, sometimes mistakes, it turns out sometimes that kids intentionally hurt each other's feelings, and then afterwards realize, I don't like that. I didn't really mean to do that. So I consider that a mistake. You made a mistake. Thought maybe it'd be fun to be mean. It's not. That's a mistake, right? So one of the biggest systems that I had was, we're going to immediately move on. The most important thing is we're a community. The number one goal is that you're here and that you're participating productively, right, in our community. And so as soon as that can happen, we're going to make it happen, which means there is no extra punishment, and really no punishment at all. And this is a really frustrating thing for some of my colleagues, who felt like, oh, if the kid doesn't do XYZ, then they don't get, there needs to be a punishment. Well, why? What is that? Who's that for? In my experience, it causes resentment. It very rarely teaches a real lesson. And what it does is, widen that gap of relationship that you actually want that to be really close. So there was one time in my classroom that it was a kindergarten class, and I had one kindergartner who was a favorite, and my favorites are always like more challenging kiddos, right? And a favorite of mine, and he wanted to get the paints out, and he wanted to paint with blue, and I said, we just can't do that quite yet. I've got to do this lesson. We've got some other things to do. The paints are up. You need help to get them down. It's not safe. So in a minute, right? You just have to wait. Not everything can be right away. So he got mad at me. So as I'm teaching, the whole class is in front of me. They're facing me. I'm facing out. He gets up and walks behind them. Now, one of my goals for myself is not everything deserves a reaction. We can wait and see. We don't have to intervene all the time. So I watch him go and get a bottle of glue. He untwists the glue. He lays it on the floor, and he starts standing on it so that this glue is pouring out. And he is like this, like, what are you going to do? What are you waiting for? And I'm watching, and have all my kids, and I'm like, so I tell the kids, okay, we're going to finish. You guys are going to get up and go to your tables. When you get up and go, you're going to notice a big mess. That mess is not your problem. I know about the mess. I see the mess. The mess is not your problem. So avoid the mess. You know what you need to do. Get started. You go get started. I'm going to deal with the mess, and don't worry about it. Right? So we need the rest of the class to be on task. So they get up and they go. I go back to the child and I say, who's going to clean this up? This is a big mess. What do we do now? I didn't say, you made a big mess. You need to clean it. This is fair. I said, this is a big mess. Who is going to clean it? And he looks at me and he's like, well, I'm not going to clean it, and you can't make me. And I said, I'm going to leave it right here. I'm going to leave it right here. But before kids in my class get to paint, get to do other things, they first need to show me that they can take care of the room and they can clean up their mess. Otherwise, they don't get to have other things that they want. So this mess can stay here for as long as it takes, but it's going to get cleaned up by the person who made the mess, right? And so he, working through it in his mind, but he went to get the paper towels and soap from the bathroom, comes and starts cleaning. And as soon as he started cleaning, I went and got things to help him clean. And he looked at me and he said, what are you doing? You didn't make the mess. Why are you helping me? I said, well, I'm helping you because I love you. This is a big mess. you don't have to do it by yourself.
Mm.
Just because you're doing it doesn't mean you have to do it by yourself. And he looked at me, he said, I thought you would hate me. I said, oh no, baby, that's not possible. Right? I love you. I'll help you clean it. So we clean up the mess. He still has time to paint. It's all okay. Right? And I think then you learn to trust that system, right? Then the kids learn to trust that system of, okay, nobody wants to make a mistake. They don't want to make the mistakes. What they need to know is how to move forward from those mistakes, take responsibility, repair, move on. And adults need to know the same thing, right? Adults need to know, how do you take responsibility and move on and move forward? It doesn't have to be so humiliating and shameful that you made a mistake. It just is a mistake. And somewhere along the way, right, this gets so confused and convoluted that we internalize these mistakes and feel shame and feel that it's so difficult to repair, and how can I do this? And I think that's a really dangerous reality for people to live in if they can't build a system to get out of it.
In your story, I think it's crucial. You didn't just say, "Oh, it's okay." You were upset in the moment. Let me clean this mess up. Well, you do something else. You did set a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Like you did say there's not going to be painting until this mess is clean. Like in adults in healthy relationships do that. They set boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please talk just a little more? We're running out of time.
Mm-hmm.
About the idea of setting boundaries like you did that.
I think, again, what, like, the fundamental importance of this is understanding what you can control and what you can't. And this is where people, I find, constantly run into their own barriers or get confused and get more frustrated, that they set boundaries that actually they cannot enforce, right? An alternative reaction could be, for the painting situation, can be, okay, well, now you have to go and sit down until I clean this up, right? But I can't make anybody sit down, physically. Maybe, am I going to physically pick up a child, put them down? No, you can't do that. You know what I mean? So right off the bat, you can't do that. And so then, but people get caught saying things like that they actually can enforce. And now you're grasping at control that you don't have. And this is
being at control you don't have.
Yeah. And we see this where people imagine their control over situations that they don't actually have. In Sioux Falls politics right now, we're seeing all these posts online that so-and-so should step down and throw their support behind a different candidate, right? So-and-so, the best thing to do would be to stop their candidacy and support the other, and that's for the good of the community. I don't understand these posts. This is not your decision to make. You don't have any control over this. And you're also not acknowledging the control and consequences of the person who has it, right? And so I'm looking at these online and wondering, what are we thinking about? When did you imagine that you have this control, or influence or opinion to make a suggestion about that? So I think that's important at all levels of setting these boundaries. And for me, that goes back to systems in the workplace and developing, roles and systems and responsibilities for people to do what they do well every day, but acknowledge that it's their choice to do, to grow and to do whatever they want in their position. So imagining this happens all the time. You imagine an excellent classroom teacher and you think, I want her to be a manager. I want her to be a principal. I want her to be, why?
Mm.
Why does that growth look like a completely different role, an administrative role? Why are you structuring those positions as though one is better than the other? They're different. But if we can define excellence for those individual roles, then you might have a teacher who says, I just want to be an excellent teacher. I want to be excellent in this capacity. And I think that this applies to everything. I really don't think this is limited to education in classrooms. I think this applies to all across industries, people understanding what their role is, what excellence within the role looks like, and then they can decide, do they want it for themselves or not? And companies can hire who they want to do well too. It just allows people to thrive and flourish, I think, instead of trying to control people.
We could go on many more hours talking about different dimensions of all of this. Just such a rich discussion. Thank you. I'll end with one question I ask all my guests. Sarah, what does doing your imperfect best mean to you?
Mm-hmm. Doing my imperfect best means considering what is the good for another. In the questions, making sure that my community or the other is always the center of my outcomes. And so sometimes, I will absolutely say it is imperfect and it happens imperfectly, I think is the only way that it happens. But if that is the constant value that I can go back to say, did I make this decision for the benefit of somebody else? Or did I make the decision just out of my own benefit? Then that's what guides me, ensuring that the answer to that is always, no, I think this is best for the other. That's my goal. That's what I want to do.
Thank you for all you do in the world and for championing the other again and again and again, and thanks for being on Awkwardly Awesome podcast, and please stay on the line as I end the show, okay?
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you all for tuning in and really thinking about Sarah's stories and wisdom and what it means to love substantially and the challenge of it all, but also the excitement and the difference each of us can make. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being you. And tune in next week for another episode. Or if it's 1,000 years from now, you may need to watch reruns because I won't be here. Anyway, until until we meet again. That sounded corny, but yeah, until we meet again, have a great day. And remember to smile.